Hi, this is Simon from Tokyo Productions and welcome to another tutorial for Motion 5. And today we're going to be looking at doing some construction work. We're going to be building this 3D space station corridor scene. So let's dive in and have a look at how it's all done. I've got a new project here. It's 1920 by 1080 and the frame rate's 24 frames a second. Duration is 10 seconds. First of all, I'm going to start out by building the arches that support the corridor. So I'm going to come to the library, Command 2, come to the generators, and I'm going to grab the color solid and add that to the group. F4 to select its color, and I'm going to make that black. Next, I'm going to turn on the grid, that's Command apostrophe, and I'll hit B for the Bezier tool, and F7 for the HUD. I want a fill of white and no outline. So I'm going to click here at the top, center, come left by 3 blocks, and then I want to come down on a grid of 5 by 5. So that's 5 across and 5 down, and click there. Let's just click roughly here, and again roughly here and roughly here, back in the center, and then we'll close it up. And we get a shape that's roughly like that. If I come to its properties, I just want to center that up, hitting the reset button. And now that's moved it over to the side, and I don't want that. So what I want to do is center this up. So I'm going to drag around all those points, hit Command Shift T, and then I can drag this across and get my center lined up like that. Then if I come to the geometry, I'm going to just tidy up these numbers here. So I'm going to set point 1, x at 0, y at 540, point 2, x at 0, y at minus 540, point 3 I'm going to set at minus 800, and y at minus 540, point 4 minus 800, y minus 360, point 5 minus 400 and 0, point 6 minus 640 and 160, last one minus 240 and 540. So now I've got a tidied up shape. It's important to have gone through and done that. Have nice clean numbers for that shape because we're building complex geometry and we want to make sure that everything lines up. Just one thing I want to do is I want to take that y value there and just bring it down a bit and maybe move that over. Let's do that. So let's move that 0.5 to minus 400 and minus 60. Something like that. Then I'm going to take this group here, Command 2 for the library, filters, I'm going to come to distortion, and I'm going to grab the mirror filter, and I'm going to apply it to this group here. F3 for the inspector, and the angle I'm going to set to 180. And now I've got a mirrored shape, which makes my construction a lot easier. Next, I want to take this Bezier shape here and duplicate it. So I'm going to hit Command D and come to its style here, set the color to black. And then I'm going to hit Command / for the overlays, Command apostrophe to turn off the grid, and I'm going to tab through until I get to the points, edit points mode. And I'm going to drag that point in, drag this point in, drag this point in, drag this point in, drag this point in quite a lot like that. This one I'm going to right click and set that to smooth. This one as well, set that to smooth. This one, set it to smooth. Leave all the others as they are. And then I'm just going to come in and adjust these Bezier handles. Move that in a bit like this, just so we start to get an interesting shape. it's a bit more futuristic looking. Bring this in a bit more as well. And we can adjust these handles to taste. Something like that is what we're looking for. You can go to town and make it look however you want. Let's bring that point out a bit as well. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to call this group Arch Matte. And then I'm going to make a new group above it, so that's Command-Shift-N. Command-2 for the library. I'm going to come down to here to Content, and I'm going to click on the magnifying glass here, search bar, and I'm going to type Rust, and it brings up Rust PNG, and I'm going to drag that into that group that I've just made. Then I'm going to hit Command-Shift-M with that Rust selected, and I'm going to take that Arch Matte and I'm going to drag it into the image mask well. F4 to come to the image mask controls, and here where it says source channel, I'm going to set that to luminance. And now our matte is cutting out the rust. Come back to the library, Command-2, filters, let's clear that search, come to color correction, and I'm going to grab the colorize and apply it to that rust. F3 for the inspector. I'm going to click on remap black and make sure that's set to black. Click on remap white, and I'm just going to bring it down till we've got a slightly bluey, steely looking result like that. I might just come in here to the black Bezier, tab through my edit points, and I'm just going to bring down that top just a bit. Maybe bring this down as well, just so we've got a bit more at the top there. Looking like something like that. Just going to rename this group here Arch Image, so we know what we're doing. Next, I want to add a little bit of simulated 3D depth to this flat looking arch. So I'm going to first of all take my Arch Matte group and duplicate it, so that's Command D, and I'll call it Arch Depth. And then I'm going to take this Arch Image group, Command 2 for the library, come to Filters, scroll down to Stylize, and I'll look for the Indent filter, and I'll drag it to the Arch Image group, not to the rust layer. Make sure it's to the group. Then F3 for the inspector. I'm going to grab this Arch Depth group that I made, and I'll drag it into the height map for the Indent filter, and I'll turn off Stretch to Fit. Now I'm just going to turn up the brightness all the way up to 1 and the ambient all the way down to 0, and I'll increase the softness to 0.5. And I'll also set my light rotation to 90 degrees, so it's coming down from the top. And now I can come in to my Arch Depth group and select that black Bezier. Turn on my overlays by hitting Command /, and I'm just going to toggle through till I get to Edit Points. And then I'm just going to drag these points out a bit till I start to get some interesting looking geometry there. Pull this one up, just smooth off that Bezier a bit, maybe pull him up a bit like that, and then I'll pull this one over like this, so we get something like that. So now we've got a much more interesting looking geometry there. Then I want to punch some holes in it, so I'm going to take the circle tool, that's C, F7 for the HUD, and I'm going to hold down the Shift and Alt keys and drag a circle just here. Let's just take the pointer, turn on the overlays, and I'm just going to just adjust that till I've got it where I want it. Might just come in and reduce the scale down to 90 like that. Then I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'm going to drag this circle down to here. So I've got a copy, drag another one down to here, and another one down to here. And finally I'm going to drag one up to there. Just want to select them all and actually make them very light grey, because you notice that this one here didn't actually pop out. Okay, so now I've got some indents. Now I actually want to copy these into my matte group to punch out a hole in each case. So I've got them all selected there. I'm going to hold down the Alt key. Let's close down the colour there. And I'm going to drag those, holding down the Alt key, into the Arch Matte group above that black Bezier, like so. And then I want to click on their fill colour and make that black. F1 for the properties, and let's just reduce that scale down to about 70. And now I think you can see we've got some really cool looking geometry that was worth taking that effort to create. Now let's turn this into a corridor of arches. Let's close up some of these groups. Close up Arch Matte, close up Arch Depth, and my Arch Image group. And I'm going to select the Arch Image group and hit L to make a replicator. And I'm going to come to the replicator controls here. Under Shape, I'm going to select Line. I'm going to twirl open Start and End here. And I'm going to toggle on the 3D switch just down there. And that gives me a Z point as well as the X and Y. I'm going to zero out the Start X and zero out the End X. And instead I'm going to set the End Z to minus 10,000. And that's created a tunnel. And I'm going to increase the number of points to 11. Right, let's call this group Arches, and let's put those other groups inside it just for tidiness sake, and close it up. Next I want to make a floor. So I'm going to make a new project. So File, New, and I'll leave it at 1080 because I'm going to change that anyway. I'm going to come to the project properties, Command J. I'm going to set the width to 1600 and the height I'm going to set to 1000. Doesn't matter about the frame rate or the duration. Let's zoom out. Let's hit Command 2 for the library, generators, and I'll select grid and bring that in to that group and hit F4 for its controls. I'm going to drag that background opacity down to 0, and I'm going to set a background width of 15 and a background height of 30. Let's come back to the library, Command 2, come down to Content again click in the search box for Rust, bring that in to that group, F1 for its transform, and just scale it up so it fills the screen, so about 80%. And then hit Command Shift M to add an image mask, and we'll drag the grid into the image mask well. Then I'm going to select that group, Command 2 for the library. I'm going to come to Filters, let's clear that search result, scroll down to Stylize and look for Indent again, and drag that in. And F3 for its controls, turn the brightness right up, the ambient right down. Let's increase the softness to about 0.5 and the depth all the way up. Let's come back to the library, come back to color correction, and again we'll grab the colorize filter, bring it in above the indent, come to the inspector, remap the black to black, remap the white to that same, just slightly slightly bluish tinge. Let's come back to that indent. I think probably reduce the depth down to about 10, something like that. So we've got a nice grid there. Now we're going to come to the Share menu, save current frame. We're going to select PNG image as the export format, and we'll hit Next. And I'm going to save that out and call it Floor Panel to overwrite the one I've already made. Let's just save this project as Floor Panel, just in case we need to come back to it. And let's close it down, Command W. Next, we're going to switch back to our Space Station build here. I'm going to come to the File Browser, and I'm going to navigate to where I saved that floor panel, and I'm going to bring it into the project, into a new group like that. And I'm going to call this group Floor. To take the floor panel, hit L to make a replicator, and hit F4 for its controls. I'm going to leave it set to rectangle, and the size, I'm going to twirl open, set a height of 10,000, and columns I'm going to set to 1, and rows to 11. And then I'm going to hit F1 for the transform for the replicator, and I'm going to rotate it through 90 degrees on X, and I'm going to come to its Y position and type -540 to bring it down to the base of the arch. And I'm also going to move it back by -4,500, -4,500 on Z. And then I'm going to take that group and move it behind the arches group. So that's Command Shift forward square bracket. That pops it down behind the arches. Now if we add a camera, Alt Command C, and set these groups to 3D, which we'll need to do just like that, we can see the different views of this. So if I come to the top view, we can now see I've got my camera down there, and I've got my arches, and in between each set of arches I've got a floor panel. Let's hit Control A to switch back to the camera view. So next I'd like to make some lights to run along the sides of the floor and along the roof. So I'm going to take my floor group and duplicate it, because that's got a useful replicator in it. So Command D, and let's call this group Lights. And let's open it up. And I'm going to hit R for the rectangle tool, and then I'm going to hit F7 for the HUD. Click on the fill color and set that to white. And I'm going to drag out a narrowish rectangle like that. Come to its geometry here. Let's close all this down, we don't need that. Let's set a value of -20 for 0.1 by 150, 20 by 150, 20 by -150, -20 by -150. I'm going to put that into a new group, so I'm going to make a new group, Command Shift N, drag in the rectangle, F1 for its properties, just want to center it up, like so, you're hitting the reset button, and then I'm going to duplicate it, so that's Command D. And I'm going to come to its style, come to the fill color, and I'm just going to make that very slightly yellow, and then I'm going to increase the feather to about 75, I think. And F1 for its blend mode down here, going to set that to screen. I just come back to that color and reduce the brightness. So I think you can see what I'm trying to do here, which is create a glow around the light. Let's duplicate that one more time, And let's increase that feather to 150. And again, let's click on that colour and reduce that down. We've got something like that. So now I'm going to take that group and open up that replicator here. And into that replicator cell, which is currently saying floor panel, I'm going to drag that group. Drag it in here or into here. Let's drag it in there. And that's now made me a set of lights there. Let's call that light panel. And close that on up. And hide it. Let's take this replicator. Let's call that left lights. And F1 for its transform. Okay, so let's zero out the X rotation, but enter a value of 90 for the Y rotation and 90 for the Z rotation. And then here, under the X position, let's set that to -800. And that Y value, let's set to -450. And now we've got those lights running down the left-hand side. One thing we want to make sure we do is that we come down to the lighting here for this replicator and twirl it open, and where it says shading, we want to turn that off. And also let's come down to the shadows and turn off both cast shadows and receive shadows, because these are going to be light sources and we don't want them to be affected by the lighting. While we're at it, let's just add a light to our scene. So that's Command-Shift-L. And you can start to see how that works. Those lights are now nice and bright, despite the fact we've got this moody lighting in there. Let's take this left-hand lights and duplicate it. So that's Command-D. Let's call it right lights. F1 for its transform, and let's set an X position of 800, and that moves them over to the right like that. Let's duplicate it again, Command-D, and let's call it ceiling lights. Come back to its transform here. Let's set an X rotation of 90. Let's set an X position of 0. And a Y position of 539, and that's going to put them up there on the roof. I think you can see that glow is all a little bit too much. We can come to these two glow elements here, and we can just reduce those values down a bit. Let's reduce that first one to 50%, maybe that one to 50% as well, or even 30%. You can just come way down actually, something like that. Maybe even this can come down as well. And I also want some lights sitting down beneath the floor so we can see through the grid to them. So let me just take my ceiling lights and duplicate those and call it floor lights. I think what I might do is take this light panel and duplicate that to make a slightly different panel for this one. So Command-D, and let's call it floor panel. And let's try and spell panel correctly. There we go. And I just want to make this a little bit more yellow. So let's come to its style, fill, let's make that quite a bit more yellow. Can't see it yet. Probably best to do that when we've got our lights in place. Let me just drag that floor panel into the floor lights source well. There we go. Then I'm going to take my floor lights, come to F1 for its properties. Let's set its position to -1000. That'll drop them down below the floor. And let's also take these panels and just increase their scale. So select all three and just drag up till we've got to maybe 500%. And then let's come to the floor lights replicator, F4, and I want to have 3 columns this time. So 3. There we go. And let's set the width to 1600. And now we have a set of floor panels like that. Let's reduce the number of rows, I think, this time to 4. Don't want them too close together. Like that. Might again just increase this base rectangle here. Increase that size even more. Let's go up to 750. Leaving those glows where they are, that's probably all right. And let's just reduce the opacity of those glows again even more, down to 10 there, down to 15 there. Let's just adjust that to base shape colour, probably a little bit too yellow. Let's come to about there. Okay, so that's probably as far as we can go in this first part of the tutorial. In the second part, we'll look at building the rest of the shell and adding in all the finishing touches. So I hope you can join me then.